Hi guys, how are you? Welcome back to Real Macroeconomics and Investing. Patreon.com/Real Macro. Come down, like, subscribe, follow along. We got a lot to talk about. In this video, we're going to decipher MMT. They claim to have a description of how the monetary system works, and we're going to unpackage these cute little words, stories, because they call it a money story. And we're going to go through it and give you the real world description of how money is created. And you will see how the father of MMT gets tangled up in his words. All right, so let's get started. All right, so let's get started, and we're going to talk about the monetary system, and we're going to start to decipher some of these words that are used by MMT. Let me bring myself up here. Oi. All right, so we're going to go to the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8 and 1. And it says very clearly, as you can see in front of you, that the government is authorized to tax and borrow. Tax and borrow. That is the only thing a government is allowed to do. All right, now let's go to the 7 deadly innocent frauds. And we're going to go to number 1. And it says here very clearly, let me get my little thingy. Number 1, right? The federal government must raise funds through taxation or borrowing in order to spend. In other words, government spending is limited by its ability to tax or borrow. Now he's going to tell us what the fact is. Federal government spending is in no case operationally constrained by revenues, meaning that there is no solvency risk. In other words, the federal government can always make any and all payments in its own currency, no matter how large the deficit is and how few taxes it collects. All right. So, going back to the Constitution, and I don't edit, so I have to stop and start. And it says government can only tax and borrow. That's the Constitution, my friends. Okay? Now, let's talk about the Federal Reserve. All right. So let's get started here. The Federal Reserve says that the Federal Reserve does not purchase new Treasury securities directly from the U.S. Treasury. All right. So basically what it's saying is that the central bank, any central bank, not just the Fed, cannot fund government. So that leaves us back to 1, where it says the Constitution, the government can only tax and borrow. All right, good. Okay, I clicked the play button when I was cutting in and out, and I'm not sure exactly where I left off. But let's do this one more time. Base money, vertical money, high-powered money, whatever they want, the monetary base, reserves, all that stuff is money. Money is money. Okay? It's just fancy ways of saying the same thing. Money. Money can only come from the private sector. Okay? And that's why in the Constitution it says that the government can only tax and borrow. Okay? It says nowhere that the government can issue money and spend it. Okay? The Federal Reserve is not allowed to fund government. Okay? It's independent within government, not of government. But it is not legal for the central bank, any central bank, it doesn't have to be the Fed, for the central bank to self-fund itself with central bank reserves, right, that it creates by itself and then goes out and buys bonds. Okay? Not allowed to do that. Good. Can a private bank self-fund? And the answer is no. They cannot self-fund and spend money. That's counterfeiting. Okay. The other workaround that they try to push, and we're going to talk about it more here in a moment, is that somehow they're in cahoots as a big conspiracy where the central bank gives money to private banks, and then the private banks take that money, go in and buy those treasury bonds to as a little loophole to fund government. However, the catch to that, the private banks must fully collateralize that loan prior to receiving any dollars. It's the same thing as if you had a house that's worth $1 million and you said, I need $100,000. I don't have liquid cash right now. Go to the bank, you put up your house, they give you $100,000. And by the way, you also have to pay the interest up front. Okay? You get the money from the central bank, and then you can go buy the bonds. Okay? But it's fully collateralized. It's not willy-nilly, hey, here's $1 trillion, go buy $1 trillion worth of debt, right? Vastly different. So these are called repos, perfectly legal, right? But the bank has to be solvent and it has to have full collateral. It's got to have it. Otherwise, you can't buy the bonds, right? So where do banks find money? That's right, only from the private sector. That's it. The only people who are going to go and deposit money in private banks are the customers, the private sector. Okay? So, all right. Let's continue on here. Make sure that it's not paused, and I got to repeat myself again. All right. So here comes the father of MMT, and it's rare when you get to corner him in a debate because they don't like it when they're cornered. They run away. Anyway. All right. Moses says, straw manning. How am I straw manning? Everything I just said was legal. Legal as per the Constitution, legal as per the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. Now, pay attention here the way he uses the verbiage. He's very good at it. Government and its agents. Government and its agents. You know who the agents are? Most people don't. That's why he uses this kind of terminology. Government and its agents. All right. So, government, Federal Reserve or central bank, any country, and private banks. That's the entire financial system. Okay. So, government and the entire financial system first impose tax liability. Okay. Let's think about that. So we're starting an economy from scratch, okay? And we're going to impose taxes. That assumes we are obligated to use that money. Is there such a law that forces Americans or any other country to use dollars? The answer is no. There is no legal obligation to use dollars or coins for any person, business, organization. You can trade in chickens. Okay? So there's no federal law that says that you must use dollars. So why would anybody want to use a dollar, run out, and impose a tax on themselves? That doesn't make sense, right? It's just ridiculous. All right. Okay. So let's go back to this again. We're going to talk more about it, but so the government and its agents first impose a liability and then provides the funds needed for compliance. The entire financial system first imposes tax liabilities. I have no obligation to pay any tax to any private bank. I have no obligation to pay taxes to the Federal Reserve. I have an obligation, if I use dollars, to pay taxes to the government. This is true. So here's the catcher. Okay? And then provides the funds needed for compliance. How can it first provide the funds needed for compliance? Nowhere in the Constitution does it say the government can issue money, and if they can tell me where it says, oh, government can just issue money and willy-nilly pass it out to everybody, tell me where I can go get a few hundred bill. Right? The government just passes out money, great. Where can I go get it? Show me. Doesn't exist. Okay. Um, so how does the dollar come into existence? Hmm, that's interesting, right? So you cannot tax something that doesn't exist unless the government just willy-nilly passes it out, right? You can't tax something that doesn't exist. Hmm. All right. So the whole thing doesn't make sense. All right. Let's continue here. First of all, whenever you see like Mozilla.com or, you know, Peter.com or something like that, uh, don't pay attention to it. It's just it's just a wall, text walling. It's nonsense. It's just somebody, whatever he says or she says, they just write up things, and it's like, oh, well, it was written. Oh my God, that's great. That must be true. No, it's not. All right. So the response was nice word salad, because that's exactly what he's doing, right? It's a word salad. Government and its agents first impose a liability and then give the money to meet those obligations. Nonsense. Nice word salad. Okay, government and its agents, for the agents, Fed and private bank, illegal for government, central or private bank to self-fund. This is objectively self-evident true based on empirical data. You cannot self-fund. Only the private sector banks and creditworthiness of people can bring a dollar into existence before a government can tax, and reserves, which are private uh, deposits, can buy a government bond. Okay? That's objectively true. It's self-evident, right? Because the government, the Fed, private banks cannot create money and self-fund, and they cannot just issue money out to anybody. You got to be creditworthy. That means you went out, you got a job, right? Got paid. Then that you have a deposit in the bank, you go, you sign, they give you your wages. Or you want a loan? Great, you got to fund it. How are you going to fund that loan? Well, you can have all the criteria that a bank requires, what's your credit risk, how much, how long you've been working, uh, what are you making, how much are you requesting, what are you putting up as collateral, how much they want on down payment, right? You can't just willy-nilly walk into a bank and say, I want a loan. Yeah, just give me the money. Yeah, okay, you issue. I got to pay my taxes. That's just ridiculous, right? That's not the way it works. So you have to be credit worthy, right? You have to be only the credit worthiness of people can bring a dollar into existence. Either I take my money out from the bank, right, or I put up my house as collateral, my car, or I put a certain amount down payment to go buy a motorcycle or a boat or whatever it is I'm going to do. And then I'm going to agree on whatever interest rate based on my credit worthiness, right? Um, They don't just give you money willy-nilly. I mean, that's just ridiculous, right? And then only once we go through that process and we bring those dollars into existence, now the government can do what? It can tax us and it can borrow from us. Otherwise, you can impose all the tax liabilities you want. The private sector never created those dollars. You can't tax what doesn't exist. It's just ridiculous. But it doesn't stop Mosler from saying that I am strawmanning. Let's see what he says next. I know you know the primary dealers get Fed funding to buy Treasury securities. Okay, so let's talk about, and I said we would talk about this, let's talk about Fed funding. It's not Fed funding. It's not. Banks, if they don't have sufficient amount of liquid assets, can repo. That means they have to put up all the collateral plus interest for the amount of the loan up, and then the Federal Reserve can give him cash to go buy bonds. It happens on occasion. Why do they do that? Because it's a bank. Loans create deposits, right? But those loans are not willy-nilly unsecured. Very big difference here. Okay, they're fully collateralized. That means the bank must have those assets plus the interest for the time period they're taking that loan. It's not willy-nilly. So, what was my response? So let's go to this part. I know primary dealers get funding to buy treasury securities. And I know, primary dealers have to fully collateralize those loans plus interest with private sector savings held at those banks. Private sector savings held at those banks. Okay? Not willy-nilly. These are not unsecured loans, all right? Without a credit-worthy, without a private sector credit-worthy citizen to bring a dollar into existence first, with their blood, sweat, and tears, no government can tax, no reserve in banks can be, I couldn't say bought because there wasn't enough characters, buy a bond. It's impossible. Can't do it. You need to have those private sector deposits, right, to create reserves so then you can buy the bond. And he knows that. But he's playing stupid. He's playing word games. All right. So when somebody starts playing word games like that, they're disingenuous, right? They're not just sitting here they're not interested in the truth. And then he responds, you're telling me you don't know they use treasury securities they are buying as collateral? Well, how do you buy treasury securities? That's right. You need private sector savings reserves to buy them. So if they don't have it in liquid form, in reserves, they can put up those treasuries as collateral, like I said before, and then you can get the reserves to go buy the new bonds. Okay? That's what I said. And now he's playing stupid. And then my response was, I just told you they do. With what do they pay those treasuries with? They use as collateral. Private sector savings. Duh. They are not willy-nilly unsecured by the private sector loans. Here, go buy government bond. They're not unsecured. And in order for you to own treasuries, you had to have had private sector deposits. That's what you're pulling up as collateral. Everything comes from the private sector. Nothing comes from government. Everything is based on private sector funding dollars first. No government issuing dollars. Can't do it. It is illegal. And what do you think his response was? Nothing. He flew away, right? He flew away. And then come down here, and here's the law. I think it's important so you guys can understand because he tries to use this hut tax, right? Oh, if you don't pay your taxes, they're going to come and burn your hut down because you didn't pay your taxes. Well, guess what? Is it illegal for a business in the United States to refuse cash as a form of payment? Answer: there is no federal statute mandating that a private business or person or an organization must accept currency or coins as payment. You can trade with chickens. Go buy some Hugo Boss with chickens. Perfectly legal for the goods and services. Private businesses are free to develop their own policies on whether to accept cash unless there is a state law that says otherwise. There you go. So there goes the little hut tax that he likes to use. Well, hut taxes, if you don't pay your taxes, they're going to burn your house down. And, he's just making up stories that have no basis in reality, right? Nobody has to use a dollar. There's no law. Okay, so you don't have to. Should you? Yeah. Okay, but you don't have to. So you should be easily convinced that what I'm telling you is legal as per the Constitution, legal as per the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 set by Congress, And whatever this man is telling you is just nonsense. Economic rubbish. Nowhere, and I mean nowhere, does it say that a government, a central bank, or a private bank can self-fund and go out, issue dollars, and spend it. And if they can't do that, then guess what? They cannot tax, nor can they borrow something that does not exist. There you have it, my friends. They can use all the little fancy little words, the high-powered money, the vertical money. They can come up with whatever they want to say. It has no basis in reality. It has nothing to do with macroeconomics, nothing to do with the monetary system. It's just voodoo, right? Voodoo economics. You shouldn't pay attention to it, and now you know why. All right, we're going to cover a lot more stuff, a little bit longer than I wanted it, but I want it to be very clear. They're playing with words, okay? Cognitive linguistic science. They're trying to put the horse uh, um, behind the cart, and the cart is pulling the horse, and it's just now that you're equipped with this information, it's like you're going to suffer. You're going to suffer because you're going to be like, huh? No, you can't do that. What are you talking about? I know. I suffer as well. All right, guys. Thank you. Take care. I'll talk to you soon. Bye bye. Ciao, ciao. Mwah.